Welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast. In these sessions, we meet the most amazing and interesting people. We learn about their passions, their business models, cool new technologies, and of course, their lessons on personal growth. I hope you enjoy. In this Boardroom Sessions podcast, we meet one of my favorite human beings, Dave Dyson of Eclipse Telecom. Dave's done a great job building a business, building a brand. He's one of the original channel all-stars. He's what we would consider a legend in this business, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to sit down and pick his brain. One of the things I'm a huge fan about, and had an opportunity to meet Dave on various different panels and committees that we serve on, is the fact that he broke some paradigms and some different work patterns post-COVID, and we share some of those lessons here. Hope you like it as much as I did, and hope you enjoy. Dave Dyson, welcome to the Boardroom Sessions podcast.
Mike, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, you and I have an opportunity to hang out and see each other quite a bit, and I find it an honor, to have you in my tribe of guys that I can counsel. For those of you who don't know Dave, Dave's a business owner, a very well-established executive in the business that I'm in. We call it the channel. Dave, why don't you describe to the layman what you do and Eclipse Telecom?
I'll try my best. I rarely talk about what I do, Mike. What I always do, lean pretty hard into, is what I believe, and I believe that communication is the most important thing that human beings do. And I happen to have a little bit of a skill set on helping very large organizations communicate better, and that's everything from connecting them around the globe to helping them interact with their customers and their coworkers differently and hopefully better. So I've built over 14 plus years, with the help of a bunch of amazing people, I think the best and coolest company in this entire industry of folks, who do what we do. And I'm such a fan of this channel, this thing we work in, because it's full of amazing entrepreneurs, people who care about customers in a way that's bordering on pathological, and so we're.
I call it the client advocate.
Yeah, making things better for people, solving problems, coming up with new ideas, solving the big challenges. It's such a gift. I don't know how I stumbled into it. Some days I have to go back and retrace the story, but holy moly, I spring out of bed every day. I jump out of bed with gratitude. I get to help people every day. I get to build people in my own organization every day, building this next generation of leaders who are going to take over this space when I'm hopefully sitting on a beach in Spain somewhere and checking the mailbox for a check.
That's right. Or Morocco.
Yeah, or Morocco, or some combination thereof. But yeah, Eclipse is born out of this passion to just help people and help solve the problems that exist. And it's funny, the bet 14 years ago was really large companies are going to want help from people like us to solve some of these problems, because the service that they were getting from their partners, their vendors, was on the steady decline, and frankly, that bet has paid off, because the service has gotten worse in our industry from the vendor side, and folks like us have come in and filled that void so that the customers can have a better experience. And in the meantime, those same clients, the big corporate IT staffs, they're getting shrunk. They have less resources, fewer people to do the jobs they need to get done. So yeah, we've been able to fill this void very nicely, and it's very gratifying. Some days it's a slog. I don't have to tell you.
Yeah.
It is the calm stuff, right?
Sure.
But on the days when you're helping people get to a new idea or solving a big problem, it's a very gratifying line of work.
Very gratifying. The client appreciates it. The vendor has a good experience through the process. You do very well because you're helping and you're in line with what's in alignment with you being a good guy, and you're compensated for it. You can build a business on it. You've alluded to Eclipse Telecom. You have built a culture and a business there, and it's exemplary. You're a speaker, an influencer on the topic of building the advisory firms and doing what you do as a consultant and an individual as well. We could talk on a lot of those topics today, but I'm going to drive this in a couple directions, Dave. One one direction I'm going to first state is that you and I have an opportunity to hang out together quite a bit. I get, I wouldn't say quite a bit, but several times a year. We're in the same places.
I'll say not enough. How's that?
That's good. I would love some more of that. But you're in Chicago. I'm here in Southern California, and so we do get to see each other in places like Dallas and Huntington Beach at events, and we get to go to some bougie advisory boards and sit in ski towns and have philosophical conversations about life, which is great for the both of us. And one of the things that's come up in those conversations that you and I have had is the pre-COVID, post-COVID work patterns that have been smashed, both mine personally and yours dramatically. You've actually taken yours on tour and given some speeches. I think there's a book in the making here if you're already writing it. But tell us about how you changed your work patterns, well ingrained record player type grooves of work patterns that you have in downtown Chicago in an office to mercurial van life and working and visiting customers on your time.
Yeah, it's I mean that journey is a long and maybe interesting to some. I can't write a book because I find myself deeply uninteresting. I'm fascinated by other people.
I disagree.
And I obviously a lot broke during the pandemic, and obviously like things that don't need to be said, but I'm going to say anyhow. We're still not entirely sure what to do about work in this country. But I think we're all starting to acknowledge like the relationship with work had become very unhealthy. I think most, comically demonstrated by the old like Silicon Valley hustle porn culture of like, I sleep in the office and I shower here and I don't leave and I'm in the grind and I'm working.
Work till your eyes bleed.
Yeah, and in some regards, when I started this company, there was a heck of a lot of that because there was that burning desire to build something. But I reflect back to my time being a corporate telecom guy where, I was giving, 70, 80 hours a week at times to one of the largest corporations on the planet that, had I been hit by the proverbial bus, I don't think would have sent flowers to the funeral. So,
Sure.
So we're all re-examining and we're acknowledging that work is an important part of life and it gives us a lot of identity and it gives us the capital to fuel some of the things we like to do, whatever your hobbies and dreams are, whether it's the dream home you want to buy or the perfect vacation or that great dinner out. Like, of course we need money to fuel our existence, but it can't be all work all the time. The stories, many of my stories are becoming apocryphal to me because I've repeated them because I think it's important to talk about this. But I'm sitting in my office, not too far from where I'm sitting right now in the West Loop of Chicago, and I had closed the office in March of 2020 when all hell was breaking loose. I think we were together, actually. We were in
Scottsdale, Arizona at an advisory meeting when everybody got the buzz on their phones that Channel Connect was canceled.
Channel Partners
in Vegas. That's right. Channel Partners in Vegas was canceled.
And so we all go home and the airports were empty and everybody was walking around like dazed and nobody knew what to do. We weren't, masking or anything. It was just chaos at that time. And I get to the office that next week and I say, team, take all of your stuff home, monitors, whatever you need, take it home. Don't plan on being back here. I think this is going to go on for a while. And boy, was I sadly really right about that. I've got this small condo here in Chicago and I still have the lease on the office. So I, made myself an essential worker, so to speak. And I would walk to the office about, 3/4 of a mile each way every day. And I was sitting there by myself. Well, that went on and life started to open up and things were getting a little more, back to wherever they were going. Normal or back to where they were is certainly not the case. But at one point, I'm just sort of staring at the door, waiting for everybody to come back in and say we're back. But something interesting had happened at that point. Some of my key people up and moved away.
For sure, new regions, yeah.
I my right hand guy, Kirk, who's been with me, 11 years and change, moved to Nashville. My another key person had moved down to Texas. Like people
Nashville,
were like,
Austin, Idaho. It was Salt Lake City. Salt Lake City, really? People were bailing from California at that time.
Everybody was re-examining like their everything, their relationship with where they live, where they work, how they work, and I was like, well, gosh, I'm sitting here by myself, and I don't think things are going to go back to that way. And we used to have all of the people in one little office down in Chicago, and I started, even prior to the realization, I started hiring different things. So I added a wonderful teammate from the Philadelphia area, and the next person was out in Arizona, and so on and so forth. So I'm like,
there was a lot of that going on. That was very popular model. I had clients leave. I had customers that opened up the position to different regions, just like you stated, which opens up a whole new conversation around how do you build camaraderie and teamwork over remote. But we're not going to go down that. We're going to go to Dave's journey.
All separate podcasts there, because I'm tinkering a lot on that topic and having a lot of fun with it. But it's important. It is still important to be together, to get together. It's important to get in the flesh from time to time. But that a complete different topic for another day. Well, some other interesting things were happening. I was having some challenges, some real struggles with, honestly, like the best and smartest human being I've ever met in my life. My partner of almost 2 years, Mara. We were in a patch, and it wasn't really pandemic related. It was life related, and not turning this into the therapy hour with Mike Miller. To say, like, we were having,
and all our friends,
and what we things were breaking for me. My notion of work was breaking. My notion of self was breaking. This thing that I had built, this very people-centric company, and like Eclipse, my methodology is anyone who comes to work here, my intention is to have them work here for the rest of their lives. And so we really like hire for fit. We want to make sure people fit the culture. Not everybody does stay forever, because we're also a very high performance culture.
Mm-hmm.
We
hence why you're so successful.
Yes, we have had to help people find their next best thing if it wasn't a perfect fit. But I do want people to stay here forever. I want it to be an amazing place to work. Most of all, because I got to come to work every day, and I love working here. It's amazing. So, but at the time, I wasn't feeling work. My personal life wasn't going great, and it again, a longer story than I'll get into here. But I closed the office, or I decided to, because the lease was coming, to its end, and I was going to shut the office down. And Mara and I were sort of heading towards what you would call separation, I guess. And so I was like, well, if we're not going to live together, I did a very entrepreneurial, Dave has ADHD thing. I was like, this is one of the reasons I drive her crazy, by the way, which was like, day one was like, hey, so I'll just get a place nearby, or maybe I'll try a different neighborhood in Chicago. I've lived in this one for a very long time. And she was like, okay, cool. Start, let me know what you're up to. And then the next day was sort of like, a change would do me good. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out to California, and I'm going to like rent a place on Venice Beach for a couple of months and just be in California for a little bit. And she was like, okay, whatever you do, Dave. And day 3 was something to the effect of, I don't want to be stuck in one place. I want to explore. So I'm going to rent an RV, and maybe I'll drive around. I'll explore the country. I'll see some of the national parks. I'll do this like nomad working thing. This was all sort of a new-ish idea at the time. I want to be the digital nomad. And she was like, okay, go rent your RV. And then like day 4 was, I stayed up all night searching RVs, and fuck it, I'm going to go buy one. And she was like, okay, can we call a timeout? And I'm like, no, I'm committed. Let's do this. And so I did. I went out and I bought this van. And I'm not an impulsive guy at all, by the way.
Yeah. Do you know how many vans, not just your reticular activator system, but do you know how many vans were sold during that exact period you described, probably with the same thought process that you described?
Yeah, to people like me, absolutely having like something resembling a breakdown.
Yes, like, midlife crisis.
And so I buy this van, and and this is funny. This is a great part of this story. I don't know if I've ever shared with you, but I buy this van in Chicago. I'm like, I just want it. I want it today. I see the one I want on the lot. I tell the guy I've got like an hour. Like, sell me a van. Here's the three I want to look at. Right? I'm here to buy a van today. And we finally get to the one. I'm like, this one. This is the one I want. And he says, okay, cool. We go in. He starts writing it up, and he goes, I got bad news. That one was actually spoken for. Now, if you can wait 6 weeks, there's a whole new batch coming. And oh, by the way, they're going up massively in price because of idiots like you who are impulse buying vans. And I was like, no, I need that one, and I need it now because I want to hit the road, right? And he goes in his system. He goes, well, there's one left, and it's in Salt Lake City, outside of Salt Lake City, Utah. And as he's talking, I get my phone out, and I'm like, cool, call him and tell him I'm coming to get it on Friday. I just booked the one-way ticket on Southwest. And
There you go.
I fly out to Salt Lake City. I get this van, and I drive it back 1,500 miles, knowing nothing about RVs, nothing about. I've always been an outdoorsman, but I was like a tent and backpack.
Get into action. Figure it out on the way, right? What could go wrong?
And so I get back, and then I start having the panic attack of what did I just do? Like, this is the stupidest decision I've made in a long time. And
About how many miles into the drive back?
It was when I got back to Chicago.
All the way back.
Oh my God, what did I just do? Boy, can I extricate myself from this? Is there a 30-day like buyer's remorse policy here, right? And I start packing it up, and I start trying to figure out what I need. And I'm gonna hit the road, and I don't know for how long. And I'm sitting out there, and it's February, and the weather's terrible in Chicago in February. It's cold, it's dreary, and I'm feeling the same way inside, cold and dreary. And I have this like super tearful goodbye with Mara, and I get in the van, and I turn the key, and like I drive a quarter of a mile and get on the Kennedy Expressway here, I-90, which cuts across the entire country, goes right by my house through downtown Chicago here. And I got just overcome with this sense of calm that I hadn't had in a really long time. And I was like, wow, that feels different. It was physical. Like I literally, something just melted away. I go, I don't know why, but this is where I'm supposed to be.
It's freedom is what it is.
It was something more. It was something, because freedom to some degree. I'm a guy who can move pretty freely. I run the company. I take vacations. I travel around. I have a wonderful daughter who lives in Europe. I go to see her as often as I can. Like, it was more than that. It was a sense of peace, and I hadn't felt that in a really long time. And so I go tooling off down the road. And something else interesting about this, and it's still sitting out there, sort of in the internet archives. That I say it's one of the scariest things I've ever done professionally. I put out a LinkedIn post. I close the office. I'm moving into a van for I don't know how long. My personal life's a mess. I'm a little bit of a mess. I'm still going to be running the business. I'm going to be working. I'm going to try out this like working from anywhere reality. I'm gonna readjust and re-examine my relationship with work, which has been everything from unhealthy to super unhealthy, because I'm one of those guys. We call them workaholics, or I'm just one of those people who prioritize work above all else for a really long time. And I was reaping some of what I sowed in the relational damage and all of that. And I said in this note on LinkedIn, and by the way,
which is legendary, by the way. That post is legendary. So it created a spark of attention that was so large. First of all, you know who your real friends are, right?
Yeah.
So people that reach out to you immediately when something like that is going down, and want to be part of the journey, right? Because some people recognize this is going to be transformational. Let's get on board. Is impactful, but two, how authentic you were, and how authentic did other people come back to you with their feedback on LinkedIn? It was mind blowing.
And this was the magic of it. It was like I said, the scariest thing I've ever done professionally, because I have thousands of connections on LinkedIn inside of our industry, but also external to all of my clients. They're all on there. And I was like, what if people read this and be like, dude's losing his mind. We got to like figure out how to stop doing business with him ASAP. And I was nervous and almost, same day and within the ensuing couple of days, the opposite happened. And it was magic, Mike. Like people were reaching out. Clients did call and they weren't like, what the hell, Dave? They were like, what do you need from me? People from this industry, friends that I've made over the years, like yourself, like clients were like, hey, if you don't know where you're going, can you detour through Atlanta and come see me and come stay with me? I'll cook you a hot meal. You can use my laundry.
People got very personal, right? They became more of a personal thing.
And this other thing that happened, and it actually sort of turned me into a crusader. Guys like me, middle-aged dudes who are successful, from the exterior appear to have it all, the wonderful life, the what looks like abundance. And I do have abundance, and of all the right things. I have an abundance of love and joy, but I'm a successful guy by the traditional measures. My company is quite successful. We have all these big clients. The industry, respects and admires us. But it doesn't mean I'm okay all the time. And it doesn't mean any of us are okay all the time. And a bunch of guys who fit that description, men, started calling and saying, hey, I saw your post. Do you have time to talk? I'm like, I'm wandering around the country aimlessly. Of course I have time to talk. I might drop you because I'm in rural Kentucky right now. But yeah, I'll call you right back. And people started reaching out and saying, I want to talk about this thing that I've been holding inside. And it was a gift. It got me thinking about things like mental health. It got me thinking about, guys like me who grew up in the 70s and 80s who were taught vulnerability was a weakness and when it's the ultimate strength. And so I started to get in all these like capacity and ability to share two ways with people. And
what a gift. What a gift.
I always like to say, Mike, I'm not a therapist, but I've spent enough time on
but if you're going through, if you're going through something and you can be a soundboard for somebody else who's got similar thoughts, what a blessing to be there for other people. It's awesome.
So the people part, and the story really centers around people in the end, because I got to see people. I went to see my father in Florida and spend time with him. And I wandered. I got to get the hell out of winter, quite frankly. So I went to where it was warm. But the relationship with work thing is the most interesting, though, because I love this story too. It was early on, and I had swung through to see a friend in Bloomington, Indiana, where Indiana University is. A good friend of mine, Scott Levy. And I sort of wandered around, and I went to go see Kirk in Nashville for my team, Armstrong, and his lovely wife, Lauren, fiance at the time. And I sort of wandered over into like Kentucky Hill Country, because why not, right? And I was sitting there one day, and I'm testing like where I can work. And by the way, I don't know if you have a sponsor, but I'm gonna give you one here. There's this like little magical $50 a month T-Mobile internet box. I shouldn't be saying this out loud because I don't think I'm supposed to use it in the RV.
Okay.
This thing works everywhere, and I'm like in the backwoods of Kentucky. And my biggest fear was, if I can't work, if I can't do video meetings, I'm gonna have to like go to major metro areas like Monday through Friday at noon, and then like take off for somewhere.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to do that. Elon's helping us out there.
I didn't know, though. But this little box, man, it works almost everywhere. And so I'm having my meetings. It's
5G T-Mobile device.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so I'm sitting in the woods of Kentucky. I'm the only person in a campground that I'm not even sure is open, but they didn't have the gates closed. So I'm like hanging out and camping in my van there. And it was a pretty nice day, like 50 degrees, 55 degrees, relatively nice for that time of year. And I'm checking in with Mara, and I'm like, oh man, I'm so bummed out. It's like so nice, and it gets dark so early, and I've got my mountain bike on the back of the van, and I'm like, I'd really like to go for a ride. There's some great trails. And she's like, are you done like with actual like meetings that have scheduled times? I'm like, well, yeah. And she's like, you're an idiot. Go for a bike ride. Yeah. I'm like, but it's the work day, right?
Yeah.
I had been so conditioned and trained on like the 8 to 5, ethic of work, the clock punching, and I'm riding around and I'm like getting off my bike and I'm checking my phone and I'm like, what am I doing, man?
Yeah.
But I thought about my own conditioning of how I work,
It's
which
a paradigm.
is like,
It's a
you get up in the
paradigm.
morning,
They
you
got
work, you log in, you log off, like, and I had to shatter all of that and be like,
smashed it. So mine got smashed as well in a very, similar methodology. I had the get up every morning and get ready for work, right? I had put a collared shirt on and went into battle. Regardless of how the day might pan out, I would sit in a Starbucks or go to a client. Even if my day was mobile, I would still be in this work mode. As we're today, very different chunks, blocks of time dedicated for work. I will change my workspace. My workspace for me is very different. It will be changed 4 to 5 times, and I will do honest work in another environment, but at a different place at a different time block.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I still work too much because of my wiring to do so. But I'm cognizant when I'm doing it, and I've gotten really disciplined about all the way unplugging when I'm like with the people who matter to me, and I have a lot of people who matter to me.
Which is a learned skill. It's not something that's innate. We had to repattern, right, Dave? You have to repattern yourself to do that, to stop, think, be there, be present.
All the way. So yeah, as I'm reimagining my sense of work, and I also realize this thing, like, so one of the things I've done in building Eclipse is, again, I want it to be the greatest place anybody ever worked. So we have a lot of perks and benefits that make it a wonderful workplace, including a lot of time off right out of the gate. Everybody gets time off. Huge maternity, paternity leave policies, like sick leave if you need it. It doesn't dent your vacation. Like, I want people to be well and cared for working at my company. And but what I realized, I could give all the vacation time in the world, but if I'm a crap model about how to take time off and have balance, people are going to always be looking at me and going, I hear what he's saying, but I also see what he's doing.
Yes. And they want to model, and they want to help, and they want to come into the culture. And so you got to set by example.
So now I make a big show of it. Like, hey, I'm blowing Friday off and I'm going to the beach.
Yeah.
Don't call me anybody. I set my out of office, alerts of it, for the internal team of like, hey, if you need me, don't need me today, right?
Yeah. I'm in a bit different situation. I'm not having all the folks that you may have on your, responsible calling you for different things, but I can get a lot done in the day at various different places and have meaningful client calls and meaningful interactions with folks, and then jump in the water for an hour.
Well, Mike, I got to tell you this too, and I have to acknowledge it. The complete and utter privilege of the kind of work we do that allows
agreed
for nonlinear workday. And I think about so my family, as I like to say, why I live this life the way I do, like I'm playing with house money, is because my birthright was to be a mailman in Buffalo, New York, like my father and my 2 older sisters who both carry the mail in Buffalo, and they don't get to like choose how they work.
No.
They go out and they walk 10 miles a day, knocking the crap out of their bodies, and
in probably one of the worst weather situations possible, right?
Buffalo very famously lives up to its weather reputation, and they're out slogging around in that stuff. And so the privilege of being able to say, well, you know what? I really think I want to work from Santa Fe, New Mexico for the next couple of weeks, and then going to do it because you have the mobility, you have the authority over your own time in life. Like this is a privilege. It's a gift. I take none of it for granted. I call it out because I'm not suggesting everybody needs to go run off and go live that life of working from wherever, but I am I'm very aware of the fact that it's not something everybody gets to choose. A teacher Mara's a college professor. She doesn't decide she gets to go run her college class from a van, right? She can't do that. She's on site. She's with her
But for
students.
studying and prepping and
Yeah,
doing the other parts of the role that are at your discretion of time, smashing or at least investigating some of the old paradigms and the old patterns of work. And when you work in a work day, when you get up
that's right.
accordingly and how you plan your morning, don't get me started. You can definitely reinvestigate those. And for me, it's been a giant uptick. And I was super excited to hear from you on the podcast because you and I've had the conversation. You took it to a whole nother level, man. You went on
Yeah.
a life journey in a van and worked from really cool remote spots. I've had moments of that. I was heading up to see you at an event in Wyoming, and I decided to drive. And so I stopped and took a call in Cedar City, Utah, with a client. We had an AI conversation about generational AI in a parking lot with Mike in a car, right? And when I left, I went for a hike and I stayed in Beaver. You know what I mean? Utah on a work day.
Did I tell you my roaming to that very same event story? Because
No, tell me.
a great van story. So there's a road that you leave some small town. I don't remember the name of it in Wyoming, and you're getting into like a 2-lane road that takes you all the way to Jackson Hole, essentially. And
Gorgeous drive, by the way. One of the best drives I've ever driven in my life.
beautiful, beautiful drive.
You drive by Harrison Ford's ranch on the way.
There's big signs though that say no stopping when you see wildlife, the big LED signs, and then all throughout, don't stop for the wildlife, don't stop for the wildlife, don't stop for the right. Like get it. Well, I'm driving, and off in this meadow to the left of me, I see a mother grizzly bear and 2 cubs. I swing the van around, and I go sit in the shoulder, and I'm not taking pictures. I'm just jumping in the passenger seat. I'm not getting out of the car, but I'm looking down. They're just like sort of hanging out in this meadow, walking around, eating berries or whatever bears are doing, right? And I'm just enraptured. I'm in awe. Like bears are amazing, right? And so I get to tap on the window, and I turn around, it's a guy, and I jump back in the driver's seat, and I roll down the window. It's like, yeah, can I help you? And he points at this badge on his shirt, and it says bear manager. And I was like, you're the bear manager? How do you get to be the bear manager? I want to be the bear assistant manager. Are you hiring right now? And he's like, it's a volunteer job. You get to be it by being a cop for a bunch of years and knowing how to handle a firearm and mostly being able to deal with people who don't follow the rules like you. And I'm like, I'm really sorry, but dude, bears. And he's like, I know, I see bears all the time. I'm like, well, I don't. He's like, well, did you take any pictures? I go, no. He goes, hurry up and take a picture and then get the hell off the shoulder and get back to driving because you're really not supposed to stop. So I have found my second act after I retire from Eclipse. There,
You're gonna go be a bear manager. That's awesome.
This is my calling.
That's a great job. I did not know it was out there. But how funny that you were that guy on the side of the road in your new van. How many times that guy saw that a day, I wonder. Amazing.
It seemed to be the major part of bear management is managing people. So
exactly. So I do welcome people to investigate in their life some patterns and paradigms. Post COVID's changed a lot of things. I'm happy to talk to people about that one-on-one too, because there's been some big upticks in my life. Both, and I would say without question, by measurement, I know this to be true. My productivity is much higher, much higher.
Oh my God.
Than it's ever been.
My output. Forget about productivity. I don't even know if I like the word anymore, but my outputs are so good now. My thinking is so clear now. And when my thinking isn't clear, when my brain's doing the thing that it likes to do, it's, let's say, at a certain time in the morning, like 10:30, my brain flags. I take a break. I go for a walk.
Yeah, you can change your space. That's what I do. I change my space or take a break or intermittent and make calls.
I don't grind it out anymore. I shake it up. And
you're actually not productive, they will say, right? If you want to get into it. Sometimes when you're on that second part of a grind, you're actually not productive. So it's not good timing. Let's shift gears real quick, Dave. We could talk about productivity hacks all day. Let's talk about this. This is something I've been wanting to ask you about. There's a future in our business. There's kind of a change. I would call it a seasoning, right? Some of the old guards, the OGs, for you really old folks or you really young folks, original gangsters. Um, you're one of the OGs in the channel. You've been around for a long time. We're somewhat aging out as a group of folks, and the what we do is being bought by private equity, and what we do is being invested upon by others with money, and they're trying to build these firms and do things differently, but it's going to look different here in the near future as it relates to our client. And so our client still has needs. They still have this vendor agnostic hole in the game, and I want you to describe it because you do a very good job of describing your value to the client. And for the listeners, please give us an overview of that. And then second, where's it going? Where's it going to be? How do you see the future consultant in this new world?
Yeah, I mean that's a ton to unpack, and I'll try to, for a guy who can't tell you what he had for breakfast in less than 15 minutes, I'll try to take on some very meaty topics and relative brevity. But I think, so first and foremost, like the what we do thing. I'm a verbal story, metaphor, analogy guy like you will never meet. And one of the things I've always said to clients when I'm explaining what we do is I use the term Sherpa, the mountain climbing term from the Himalayas, from Mount Everest most famously. And it's because of this. We know how to get you to the top of the mountain. We know where the pitfalls are. We know the crevasses are. We know where the danger is. We know where to put the ladders. We know where to hook the ropes. But and when you're making big technology purchasing decisions, and these can be multi-million-dollar decisions for these large organizations, you definitely want to do everything in your power to get it right. And there's a good chance you're going to do that thing once in like a decade. And we're sitting here doing it every day. And we're building all this connective tissue to the vendor community, and we're seeing how they're performing, and we're seeing how they're innovating, and we're seeing how their leadership is behaving. So we're just bringing all this insight.
We're talking to our peers to validate. We're taking all of the meetings to understand the nuances and what they say they can do, but they really haven't done yet.
And because our community is so tight knit, friends like you and I talk all the time. There's always a 5-minute. Who's doing well? Who's screwing everything up for you?
Right. Exactly.
And so we've got our finger on the pulse of this stuff, and we can cut through the sales BS for the client and say, you have given me your problem set and statement. We're going to figure out who can best solve for that. And this is a thing we say to our clients all the time at Eclipse. Our job is to make it so that at the very end of this process of transformation, you are left with nothing but good decisions. It's still a hard decision because you have to make one, because it's not always that like only one answer becomes apparent. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 really good options, and then the client has to do a little trust their gut thing. And so yes, we are shepherding people through very complex processes. And here's another interesting thing. From the time I got into the business of telecom till now, the wild amount of complexity that's been injected in, it didn't get simpler. It got way harder over the last couple of decades. It used to be a relatively simple, you need a thing, you go get a thing from AT&T or somebody in the
bundle as much as possible, put it all under one agreement, get it into a master services agreement.
That's right. It was easier back then. Now it's a lot more complicated.
You need flexibility, scalability. You need independence. You need to be able to move on a dime and change the technology if possible.
And it's something like you and I share like ludicrous amounts of passion for contact center. You make a decision today, and a week from now, somebody will have an innovation that's better than the thing you just made a decision on. Like that's how fast that stuff is changing. So especially with the AI, ChatGPT, all of this coming into the mix. So our job is to stay out in front of all of that. And then when the client says, I have a thing I need to solve for, you're able to pull from all of your experience and say, well, I've solved similar problems, and then I'm going to take your nuancy thing and I'm going to solve for that too. So it's really about helping people get to the things they're trying to solve for in their business so that they can be more productive and they don't have to worry about it. And I want to touch on this other point because I have been sounding an alarm right now. Yes, private equity has entered our space. There is a lot of chaos as a result. People, I don't know if I'm an OG, but I'm definitely in that middle generation of like, certainly not hip and cool anymore. I don't think any. I said this the other day.
You have the carrier background though, so I consider anybody who has like a career at the Bell, into the original part of your story, then this long lineage of independence beating up the carriers. I consider any one of those in that category an OG.
But I have a young-ish team at Eclipse, so like a very on average young team. I'm definitely like the old guy here. I think we have a little bit of a crisis going on right now because we don't have the thing you just said. People getting out of the system, and you can say anything you want about AT&T. You could be the biggest hater of AT&T. You can be down on them as a company in any way, shape, or form you want. But I'm going to say this one thing: if you worked there in the era when I did, in the Bell system, and then eventually AT&T, and when you did. They trained the hell out of us. They taught us how to be professionals. They taught us how to think strategically. They taught us how to think like a CFO.
They invested in us. They put us in long, lengthy trainings. They knew that some people would take the training and go leave the company and go to work at Cisco, but we had to learn Cisco iOS if you wanted to talk about how a box connected to a device. You needed to learn T-Carrier if you wanted to talk about how this feature would work over a frame relay.
That's right. And they taught us the bits and bytes. They taught us the business parts. They taught us how to work with big enterprise. And then in that same era, other people that I would definitely use by your definition as OGs, you had like the CLEC world. You had your Paytex, your
CBeyond,
your
Frontier,
CBeyond, training armies of like young people. CBeyond would grab, they literally pull you out of the college dorm or the fraternity or sorority house and put you into a telecom sales job.
Some of those people are still doing it. They all learned and trained. I got the Frontier 7 steps of the sale. Press hard 3 copies.
Frontier, Integra, all of these guys were like training people how to but they were investing in them is the thing. And right now, that's not happening. And people are not really training people how to think about the business. They're not training them on the technology. And we have a little bit of a crisis because you mentioned private equity coming in, which is funny because in some regards I'm a detractor, but in other regards I'm grateful that they're here because it has validated this business, this crazy business all of us have built, this insane industry we're all a part of, has been validated by the outside money who says this is valid, this is real, this is probably the way businesses should be buying all of this stuff, and likely will continue to start increase buying this way. So we've been validated, and it's also this other thing. There didn't used to be a great exit strategy for these businesses. I went to a bank a couple of years in. We were making some revenue, and I showed them all my financials, and they were like, "We'll give you a loan. You just have to put your house up against it." I go, "But what about this money that comes in?" And they're like,
the business.
Doesn't make sense to us. It didn't make sense to the banks, but now we have, people with lots of capital who've come in, and they're giving exits to the people who were the true, founders of this industry 25, 30 years ago, and those people are hitting their 60s, and they're able to get that, liquidity exit event and get out of the business. I'm happy for my friends. I have a ton of friends who've sold in the last couple of years.
Sure.
A ton. And I'm thrilled for each and every one of them. I really am. What I worry about, and I'm going to talk about the youth movement thing in a second, but I worry about, this is a business that was built on relationships and souls and providing like a very white glove and in-depth experience. And that's hard to scale. And maybe some of these guys are going to figure it out. But the reality is, I think the sort of customer who buys from an Eclipse, from a Dave, or who buys from a Mike Miller, they might not be as excited about somebody who's like, well, we've replaced all of the awesomeness of a Dave Dyson with some really great process I don't know. It's going to play out. It's going to be interesting.
I think there's a role for us forever, even more now than ever, because there's more platforms than ever. There's more integration points than there's ever been. There's more risk in a bad decision than there's ever been for our decision makers. And what is the harm in going to talk to somebody like us to have a conversation around what the Joneses did, right?
Yep.
Hey, tell me, Dave, what the other guys did over there. They were in the same boat.
But going back to the real Dave setting the panic button crisis, and anybody from our industry who's listening to this, please start investing in your young people, giving them the technical and business training they need, because we have a chasm. All of us who were the recipients of that gift, of all of that great training from the CLECs, from the big telcos, we haven't necessarily passed it on to this next gen. And I work really hard on investing in my people. And so for anybody, again, listening who maybe runs a company similar to mine or an MSP, I have a budget of thousands of dollars per person per year for personal development. I have a young team.
Does that include yoga?
Yeah, there's some yoga in there. Sure. You got to be balanced.
My employer takes care of yoga.
But yeah, we definitely need to be investing in a youth movement right now, because we're not doing a great job of doing that. We're not doing a great job of getting like what I'll call non-traditional technology voices into the room. There are communities out there where we have exceptionally bright and motivated people who, if we train them in the way we do business, will be very, very successful. So it's funny, you'll like this. I was talking to a younger member of my team, and I spoke specifically about her potential. You know, you've got all this potential here, and here. And I was telling her that she should be very excited about that. And I said, you know, the sad realization for me as I tell you that is, and I just turned 50 about a month ago.
You look real young.
Thank you. I act young. That's half the battle. And I said to her, you know, the sad part for me, the realization is, nobody uses the word potential in relation to Dave Dyson anymore, unless it's the following: Dave has the potential to cause a lot of harm. So Dave really has the potential to cause some damage. Like, nobody's like, wow, that guy's going places. I'm already at the place. And so I feel compelled over almost anything else, like building this business further, et cetera, over building the young people so that one day they too can reach their apex, their greatness, so that they can be sitting up at 50 years old and reaching their hand back and helping and pulling people up. That's I put so much of my energy into that right now, in my own company and even external. Like I want to be part of the rising tide. I do think we have a challenge. And by the way, we're nibbling around the edges of this particular shrub. Work is broken in corporate America right now, and we have this amazing place where people can come build. You know, you come work for me, you can build your own thing inside of the castle walls of Eclipse, and nobody's going to be like, don't do that. Don't.
And isn't that counterintuitive? You and I were both a part of that machine that trained us very well. Also, made us conform to a very set, specific rules, values, norms. This is how we operate. This is the deal. And now I'm a product of exactly what you're describing. Somebody took a chance on me, right? Pulled me into an organization, said, Mike, go build Mike Incorporated. And I did. And thank goodness, I never knew I was an entrepreneur. I thought it was a fancy French word for somebody else doing something else. I thought I was a company guy, right? But I was given all the autonomy to go build my own brand and do my own thing. And you can do that in this business and still work at an Eclipse or a side path.
You know when I quit AT&T, because I sort of had a panic moment. I'll never forget this, because I was coming back from a Chicago Cubs game on the L train, the red line in Chicago here, and we'd done the only thing I missed from my AT&T days is access to the luxury box at the great
right, golf tournaments.
but we had this awesome event with the Cubs, and we got to like hang out after with Dusty Baker was the manager at the time, and I'm riding back with this vice president, and he's like, "What do you want to do with your career?" I don't know, man. Like I'm enjoying working here. I'm a top performer at AT&T, and he says, "You're a bright guy." And you get discussed in the rooms where things get discussed about like, is this a guy we want to push into leadership or management? And he says, but there's a lot of reservation because you have this ferocious independent streak. And he said, you have it all in front of you. You can start moving up this ladder, but you're going to have to tuck that away. And he said it, as he said it, he saluted.
Wow.
He said, you're going to have to tuck it away and like sort of get in line. I put my resignation in a week after that conversation.
Good for you.
And I was like, that was like a year where I was going to go to President's Club and all that stuff. And I was like, nope, done. I came home. I said, Mara, I think I have to leave corporate America. I was going to leave telecom altogether. And then I found my way into the channel, via a former colleague at AT&T who happened to call me at that same time and say, hey, what do you know about the channel? I go, absolutely nothing, because I was working in high enterprise. So we didn't really interact or run into the channel at that time. And so I got to go learn about the channel over the next year. And then a year, after that year, I decided Eclipse is going to be a thing I could hatch. So I like, if I didn't have that conversation, 15 years might have gone by and I would have been like a regional vice president, middle manager dude at a huge telco somewhere, and probably pretty sad.
I only wish I would have learned when you learned at that point. It took me a good 8 years, 9 years in my career from that moment that you just described. I knew I didn't want to be a part of that group, right? That wasn't my team that I signed up for when AT&T came aboard, right? I had never lost to AT&T, let alone I never had a strategic loss against them when I was selling against them. Then now they're running the show, but it wasn't enough for me. Jim and Pat at SidePath, they made the move right then at that what you described.
But listen, Miller, like the right time is exactly the time things happen, right?
Sure.
Like it's my favorite line from Lord of the Rings, right? A wizard arrives precisely when he's supposed to, right?
Yeah.
So like,
but kudos to making
your life arrives when it's supposed to, and I think a lot of the things that I had to go through. So I'll give a good example. I'll pick on AT&T a little bit. Not notorious for having the world's greatest work culture. The channel agent guy I worked for a year, where I learned this piece of the business, was a little bit of a challenge to work for. And all of those things informed for me the culture that I wanted to build, the kind of place that I wanted people to be excited about coming to work at. So if I didn't know what I don't want to necessarily call it bad, but a culture that didn't resonate with me, I'm trying not to use negative terms. If I didn't know what a culture that didn't resonate with Dave was going to look like, how can I build something that was going to be great for other people? So my whole goal over the last 14 years was just to build a place that people could be themselves, where their voice mattered, where they were empowered, where they were free to make mistakes, where they could learn from those mistakes, where they could push themselves to grow, where they were surrounded by people who supported and cared for them. That's all a factor of the things I learned maybe the hard way, other places, by having not the best cultures or maybe not always the best bosses. So I have gratitude for all of that experience, because without it, I don't think I ever get to build the thing we are today. So.
Absolutely. And we learned so much when we were in that environment, and then know that we don't want to have it, right? So I didn't get that at first. I went to join some friends, same personal story, at their business. And the thing that was inconspicuously missing in the office was the stack rankings board. I said, hey, where's the stack rankings board? I want to put my name up on front in lights. That's what motivates me, right? We used to also call it the read 'em and weep board if you were at the bottom, right? You didn't want to see your name at the bottom. So that was a different motivating factor. And my good friend Jim was like, never will I have one of those ever again, right? Like, and his thought process was from a completely different mindset, like you were describing. His mindset was, if I gave you a number, Mike, it's just going to limit you. I want you to pick your own number. Pick your own number and go do what you're going to do, because it's going to be bigger than you think, than I think. And so I went without binders. I went without constructs. I went at it without like, what's a top end. I would go to events and look at people like you and say, I want to do that. How can I do that?
I love it. And I think life in general is as much about learning what not to do. And I'm in this really wonderful place where I get to share some of this abundance of experience I've had,
and we appreciate it on the podcast. That's what we're trying to hear. And I'm going to reframe a few things I heard from you today. First of all, everything beyond being a postal carrier in Buffalo is upside for you in life. So you've met the success metrics. You're not a postal carrier in Buffalo. So
but mostly because I'm not tough enough, man. I'm just gonna call it out. I wouldn't have lasted a week.
Okay. Well, you did good on not doing that. So everything else there is upside. But I like the way you're investigating paradigm shifts, how you approached a big change in your life multiple times. One, this midlife crisis, you went on and got in a van and found all these cool things about how to work mercurially. Two, you made a life change shift when work came to you and said, fit into the Borg blockhead and become a bell-shaped head and come work here. You were rebelled against that. My 1980s punk rock Mike literally bristles when I hear that story. If some dude would have put his hand to his head at like that, at an executive, I would have felt very similar to you, Dave. He probably did that. It was probably a fight or flight moment. He was looking to get, you're either on the team or off the team kind of moment. It worked. Mission success, So you framed that for us. You've been fearless in your commitment to your people and to your client. That's another thing I heard here for the listeners. I also heard, for those of you who want to continue on in your career, it's all about the training, the technical, behind the scenes, under the covers kind of stuff. Training is what I heard from you, Dave, right?
For sure. And just understand what's important to businesses and business leaders, because the tech stuff comes and goes. It changes. Think about what we were selling 20 years ago versus what we're doing now, right? Like it's unrecognizable. And so you have to always be evolving that part of your game. But at the core, you have to understand what business needs and how to solve problems for them. And those are a little more constant. Those things, stay a little more consistent over time. And so not enough time, not enough resources, not enough money, not enough budget. Those things don't go away. So learn that part too, because I think it's really, really critical to be a great business person as well as a good technologist.
Yes. So again, words of wisdom from an OG, Dave Dyson. We appreciate having you on the call here today. And everybody will put Dave's LinkedIn below. You can get involved in some of the strings. I'm looking forward to the next wacky one where he declares something kooky to us, like he's moving to Morocco full time or something of that nature. But
you'll be the first. The boardroom podcast will be the absolute first call when I have my next wonderful idea here.
I'm looking forward to it, Dave. Thanks for taking the time to share with us what you've learned.
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you so much.
Hey, Mike here. Hope you liked this boardroom session. Please check back to our future sessions as we're recording a new one every month. If you want to reach out, look for me on LinkedIn or send me a note at mike@sidepath.com. That's Mike at sidepath.com.